There was honestly, there was no God. I was just talking about this the other day. I was like, until God delivered Nick in 2009. Before then, there was never no God in the house. It was all sin, 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 sinful acts. Speaking of sin, this, that. So, I always saw men. I grew up around a whole bunch of men who, would find a lot of women. All I hear them talk about women. I I rarely had any girls talking to me about how to be a lady or
Mm-mm.
what girls do and what kind of men they should look for and stuff like that. So, I picked up the mentality of a masculine mentality.
Okay.
So that masculine mentality, also, I would also say kind of like what happened to me as a child, but I don't want to focus on that because I really think despite of that actually happening, I would have still been struggling with it because of my surroundings.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you believe, and I know you shared your upbringing, how there was no God in the house. So do you believe that there are people that have lesbian issues, especially if women struggle with the very same thing because they grew up with a lot of boys? You think that plays a role in it? Because I know certain groups of people, community, like you was a lesbian. So I don't know if you hanged around with other lesbians that had similar experiences or different experiences. Can you share some of your thoughts of why one person would want to make those type of changes, like based on the community you used to hang? I don't know if you hang used to hang around with lesbians, but could you share some of those experiences, even some of those conversations that y'all had? Maybe a girl probably been violated, or maybe she maybe grew up with a lot of boys. Could you share? Because I guess I'm trying to understand statistically, like who's getting affected in which way, which direction. Because we're on the outside looking in. We only
Mhm.
could go based on what we read or even some of the experiences that we encounter, but you actually was in it. You was in that circle. So only you can tell us what are some of the conversations that's being had in terms of that those type of transitions.
Yeah. Um, I have 2 points. So the first point I want to say is because I heard one of your past shows where Brother Smith was saying about his son. His son saw heels, his mother heels, and he was like, "Oh, heels." So it's kind of like you see something of the opposite sex and it looks good. You hear, if you're a girl, you hear your brothers or your dad, you hear about fornication, you hear them with a lot of women, so you're like, man, where they're doing this, maybe, it sounds appealing. Even if you're a
Mm,
teenager, it sounds appealing. So just like the kid, but he had his father to say, mommy shoes, no, you know? And
Mhm.
by the time people started doing that to me, it was a little too late. I had already, built like a personality, and if you don't start young, it's gonna be really hard to break when they get older, when they're in high school or eighth grade or something like that. But another point I want to say that yeah, the conversations I've had with a few of my former friends, they've been violated, and violation, I would say it does play a big part because then a lot of women feel like they can't never trust a man, and even till this day, I feel like I still struggle with that, and because in the back of your mind, you know how what has happened, and you don't really. It's like you can't never like find trust. It's like you want to trust or you actually do trust, but then you're like, this happened to me when I was 8 or 9 or 10 and stuff like that. So a lot of people, a lot of women struggle with that.